If you've been listening for a while, you've probably done a fair amount of inner work. You know a lot by now. You've learned about nervous system safety, letting go, intuition, boundaries. But knowing isn't the same as living it. Maybe you're wondering, okay, how do I actually put all of this into practice? When does it all come together? When do I get to start feeling good? And the answer is very simple. You get to choose. Healing isn't complete when you understand it or when you've gathered enough information. Healing deepens when you embody it. This episode is all about what life looks like when your healing becomes action, when you stop talking about how to feel better and start actually doing it, when alignment moves from a concept to a choice to lived experience. This episode is going to bring all of our others together. And I also have a special invitation to something that will help you put everything we talk about in this episode into practice. So you're going to want to listen all the way till the end. Welcome to Jyotindi, Journey to the Inner Divine, a sacred space for healing energy, emotional release, and soulful transformation. If you're ready to live with joy, ease, and purpose, you're in the right place. Welcome back. Today's episode is truly the missing piece of your puzzle, and I'm so excited to share it with you. So, first, we need to talk about embodiment and demystify it. What is it exactly? Embodiment is not getting it right all the time, and it's not being endlessly calm or spiritual or confident. You're not the Dalai Lama, nor should you strive to be. You are just a human, living a perfectly flawed human life and trying to do it the best you can. And that's good enough. Embodiment is letting your values and your nervous system guide your choices. When your body and your life agree with what your mind and soul already know. Here are a few examples of what living in alignment actually looks like in real time. Let's say something happens to you and you feel discomfort. Instead of overriding it or trying to get back to what you were doing, you listen. You take a beat and you ask what this discomfort is trying to tell you. You allow yourself to feel it rather than just try and brush it off and get back to your life. Another example would be when you notice something feels off, whether it's a tightness in your chest when you think about a commitment or a sense of dread about a relationship that should make you happy. That's your body giving you information, and it's not a problem to fix. The first step isn't immediately change everything. It's to get curious and ask, what is this feeling trying to tell me? Sometimes the misalignment is external, like you are in the wrong situation. But often it's internal, like you're abandoning a truth that you know but haven't acted on yet. Living in alignment means honoring what you discover in that inquiry, even when, and especially when, it asks you to make uncomfortable choices. Maybe you choose rest, honesty, or space, even when it's inconvenient. See, the truth is, embodiment is a practice, not a personality trait. It's built through small, consistent acts of self honoring. It's not a one and done event or something that you can just turn on and off at will. It's a series of keeping small commitments to yourself, to your values, and to your nervous system. Each time you honor one of these commitments, you're teaching your body that you can be trusted. And over time, those small choices compound into a life that actually feels like yours. So, how do we get to embodiment? We get there through aligned action and making choices rooted in truth instead of fear. So let's talk about what aligned action actually feels like in real life, because I think this is where things can get confusing. Okay. Aligned action isn't about doing the right thing or making the bravest choice on paper. It's not about forcing yourself to be decisive or confident all the time. It's much quieter than that. Aligned action comes from clarity, not urgency. You know that feeling when you're rushing to make a decision because something feels time sensitive, or because you're afraid of disappointing someone, or because you just want the discomfort to go away? That's usually not alignment. That's your nervous system saying, please make this stop. Aligned action feels different. It's slower. It gives you a second to breathe. It doesn't need to prove anything. It's making choices from self trust instead of self betrayal, from that inner yes that feels steady, even if it is a little scary, rather than from external pressure that feels frantic or heavy. And I think we've all been there, doing things that we don't really want to do, or saying yes when your whole body is saying no, or staying in situations that drain us because it feels easier than dealing with the fallout of leaving. That's fear based action. Fear based action usually feels rushed. It looks like people pleasing, forcing yourself through things, trying to prove that you're strong or capable or good enough. There's a tightness to it, and your body feels like a sense of bracing. Aligned action doesn't have that edge. It feels calmer and clearer and more honest, even when it's hard. And here's something that surprised me when I first started paying attention to this. Aligned action often feels almost anticlimactic. It's not loud, it doesn't come with fireworks. Sometimes it feels like a quiet decision that you make while you're on a walk or sitting with your coffee in the morning. But over time, those quiet choices create so much more peace and momentum than the big, dramatic, fear driven ones ever did. One of the simplest ways that I've learned to check in with myself is just to ask, does this choice expand me or deplete me? Not, will this make everybody else happy? Not, will this keep the peace? Just, does my body feel more open when I imagine this or more contracted? Another really honest question is, am I doing this because it's aligned or because I'm afraid of what will happen if I don't? Am I afraid someone will be upset or that I will look selfish or miss out on something? Am I afraid that I'll have to face an uncomfortable truth? And there's no judgment in noticing that. We've all made choices from fear. It's part of being human. But alignment starts when you begin to notice the difference, when you let your body have a vote, when you stop overriding that quiet inner voice just to make things easier in the short term. Aligned action doesn't demand that you change everything overnight. It asks that you are honest, one choice at a time. And that honesty, that's where embodiment begins. I want to give you an example of what this looks like. So, imagine you've been feeling increasingly drained by a friendship. And after weeks of journaling and sitting with the discomfort, you finally realize this person is consistently dismissing your boundaries. And you've been allowing it by not following through with consequences. An action from urgency would be sending a long emotional text message or ending the friendship dramatically or setting another boundary that you aren't actually going to enforce. An action from clarity would be taking responsibility for your part in this situation by recognizing that you've actually taught them your boundaries are negotiable, letting that truth settle. And then, once you're grounded again, either enforcing an actual consequence or compassionately stepping back without explanation or negotiation. Clarity means honoring yourself enough to act on what you know is true, even when it's uncomfortable, rather than just talking about boundaries while continuing to accept behavior that violates them. See, boundaries without consequences aren't boundaries, they're requests. And when you repeatedly make requests that aren't honored and then don't follow through, you're actually training the other person and yourself that your words don't mean anything. You're essentially saying, I'll tell you what I need, but I won't actually protect it. And that is the opposite of living in alignment. because alignment isn't just about knowing your truth or speaking your truth, it's about acting on your truth. It's about integrity between what you say matters and what you will actually allow in your life. Now, it's easy to focus on they keep crossing my boundaries without acknowledging the and I keep allowing it part. But that's not self blame. Okay. That's self empowerment. Because once you recognize that you have a part in this, that you haven't enforced any consequences for these crossing of boundaries, you reclaim your power. You stop being a victim of their behavior because you're somebody who's been tolerating it. And now you get to choose differently. Sitting someone down to have another boundary conversation when you haven't enforced the last five boundaries is actually less aligned than just quietly stepping back or even ending the relationship, because at least that's honest. You're matching your actions to your values instead of performing boundaries while undermining them. Living in alignment sometimes means disappointing people, leaving without explanation, or being seen as the bad guy, because the alternative is abandoning yourself in order to keep the peace. And self abandonment is the ultimate misalignment. Okay, so here's another similar example that will highlight what I mean by that. Let's say you're in a relationship that you feel isn't really right for you. Nothing's bad, okay? Nothing, no huge missteps, no boundary crossing. It just doesn't quite feel right. Maybe there's no spark or something like that. But you're staying because the person you're with is a great person and you don't want to hurt them. They don't deserve that. So you abandon yourself instead. You ignore the signals that you should move on because, after all, things aren't really that bad. Except doing that hurts you both in the long run. Maybe it's okay for now, but 2 years down the road, you meet somebody who's actually perfect for you. Now you have to make the decision to follow your desires and break the heart of somebody that you've been continuing to lead on for years. Maybe by this time, you guys have a dog and a house, and now the breakup is much more complicated. It's messy, they're attached. Or maybe you stay, but you aren't giving them the best version of yourself because your heart isn't really in it. You're silently suffering and you're robbing them of being able to find somebody who's fully available. These types of choices keep both people from their aligned paths, and it turns kindness into a quiet harm, creating suffering for everybody involved. When if you had just ripped the band-aid off, it would have hurt, maybe for both of you, but the pain is fleeting and you can both begin to heal and move on. So let's reframe this decision, okay? Choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's honest. And honesty creates better outcomes for everyone involved. The truth can be painful sometimes, but the truth is always better than living a lie. And please don't get me wrong, it can be extremely scary. Beginning to honor yourself and your needs and then acting on them is not something most of us have a lot of practice with. You might be thinking things like, if I choose myself, I'm going to hurt people. Or if I say no, I'm going to disappoint everyone. Or even if I leave, everything is going to fall apart. But the truth is that when you abandon yourself, everybody loses. Because when you show up whole and clear and aligned, your relationships become more authentic. Your presence becomes more nourishing. And your yes actually means something. So when you do what's best for you, it often ends up being what's best for everyone, even if it's uncomfortable at first. Let me tell you what starts to change when you start choosing alignment, and not choose it all at once and not choose it perfectly, but just consistently. Well, first of all, your life doesn't suddenly become easy. You still have hard days. You still feel your emotions and you still get triggered sometimes. You don't magically transform into Mother Teresa, but the way that you move through your life starts to feel different. Maybe you wake up with a little more space inside yourself. Not because everything is handled, but because you are no longer at war with your own needs. You're not waking up already bracing for the day, already negotiating with yourself about how much you can override your feelings to just get through it. You start trusting yourself in small ways. You notice when something doesn't feel right. And instead of pushing past it, you pause. You ask questions. You give yourself permission to adjust. Your anxiety doesn't run the show the way that it used to. It does show up, but when it does, you recognize it as information instead of a command. You don't immediately rearrange your entire life to make it go away. You listen, you regulate, you choose from clarity instead of panic. And your relationships shift too. And this part can feel kind of rough at first because you stop over explaining yourself. You stop saying yes just to avoid discomfort. You stop contorting yourself to be smaller or more agreeable or to make things easier. And what's interesting is that some relationships deepen because of that honesty, and some will naturally fall away. Not because you're cutting people off or anything like that, but because you're no longer abandoning yourself to keep things familiar. You get more energy, not because you're doing less, but because you're not leaking it everywhere. You're not constantly managing other people's emotions or fixing situations that aren't yours to fix or carrying responsibility that doesn't belong to you. There's a quiet confidence that starts to build, not the loud kind or the performative, cocky type, but the kind that comes from knowing I can handle myself. I can listen to my body. I can make choices that I trust, even if they're a little uncomfortable. And maybe the most important shift of all of this, you stop searching desperately for answers outside of yourself, and you begin to realize that you're already connected to the infinite wisdom. You still learn, you still grow, and you still seek guidance, but you stop looking for someone to tell you who to be or what to do. You're in relationship with your own inner knowing, and life starts to feel less like something that's happening to you and more like something that you're actively participating in and co creating with your higher self. That's what embodiment really looks like. Not perfection, not spiritual bypassing, and unfortunately, not constant peace. Just a life where your choices, your values, your nervous system, and your truth are finally working together instead of working against each other. And this is not a fantasy. This is what happens when healing stops becoming something that you think about and start becoming something that you live. I know this is a lot to take in. And for some of you, it might be pointing toward a way of living that feels very different from how you've been moving through the world so far. Change can feel heavy, especially when you've spent a long time doing everything on your own. Even when the change is something that you want, even when it's aligned, it can still feel scary to step into it without support. And here's what I've learned, both in my own life and in the lives of the women that I work with. Big shifts don't actually require more strength. They require more safety. Things become easier when you're not carrying them alone, when you know that there's somebody there walking beside you, someone who knows how to listen, who understands the nervous system, who can help you stay grounded when old fears surface, and who can simply be present while you're finding your footing. And that's why I created something that I would love to invite you into. Okay, it's called The Oracle Within. And it's a free 5-day journey designed for women who are ready to stop forcing change and start living in alignment. It's a space to slow down, to reconnect with your body, to rebuild trust with your inner knowing, and to practice choosing yourself in small, sustainable ways. Over 5 days, we create a container where your nervous system can soften, your body can settle, and your inner voice can come back online, where you're not guided by answers outside yourself, but back into the relationship of your own inner wisdom. Whether you experience that as your higher self, or the universe, or divine intelligence, or something beyond words, this is about learning how to listen again, how to recognize alignment when it arrives, and how to say yes to what is meant for you without guilt. Because that subtle guidance has been there all along. You'll be supported, you'll be guided, and you'll be held in a space where you don't have to rush your unfolding or prove that you're doing it right. If you've spent most of your life putting others first, this is an opportunity to take time for yourself. Not because it's indulgent, but because it's necessary for the life that you're trying to create. So if this resonates with you, you can join us at mariaharoura.com/oracle, and there's a link in the show notes. And if now isn't the right time for you, that's okay. Just know that the path you're walking is unfolding exactly as it needs to, one honest choice at a time. And as this episode starts to wind down, I want to remind you of something simple and important. You don't have to embody everything that we talked about today all at once, okay? There's no finish line that you're racing toward, and there's no version of yourself that needs to be rushed into existence. Embodiment happens one honest choice at a time. Every moment that you pause instead of pushing, every time that you listen instead of overriding, and every yes that comes from truth instead of fear. Those moments matter. They're not small moments, and they're how your alignment becomes real. If you're ever unsure, just come back to this. Alignment isn't about being certain, it's about being present. It's about letting your body and your values guide you, even when the next step feels quiet or unremarkable. And if today's episode stirred something in you, a longing or curiosity or a sense of possibility, let that be enough for now. Just notice it. Let it sit with you. And before you go, I want to invite you to take one slow breath. Feel where your body is supported. Feel yourself here, now, doing the work simply by being willing to listen. You are learning how to live in alignment with who you already are. Thank you for spending this time with me today. This episode was so powerful. Until next time, remember, there is no path to happiness. Happiness is the path.